So let's get started. All right, so we'll cut right into it. Um, some of you might have came off of Rob Bailey's list, which Mark knows Rob from way back. Sorry, my cat is wanting to get involved here. um, or my wall. So hey, come on. I first met Mark, I think it was 2017, right, Mark? Something like that.
Gosh, 2014, 15, even
Yeah,
16.
maybe it was before that. Yeah. um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
when did you first start doing the Facebook ads, agency stuff?
I first started posting about what I was doing, I think in 2015. But I think when we really started to get to know each other more intimately through the LMM group and everything like that, I think was the beginning of 2017. So when I first met Mark, he came in and was actually kind of surprised when he came in because he said, "Well, yeah, here's what I kind of been doing a few things in internet marketing and sales space, and you know." We asked him what, and he said, "Well, I used to run Dan Kennedy's chapter in Chicago, and I used to have a radio show in Chicago, and then I used to have a number one hit in house music, 1980s, and then I used to sell digital programs all across the country to DJs, and and it was just the resume." Just continues to stack and stack. Oh, and I ran all these gyms, and I'm a double XL black belt, and all these martial arts. And Mark is an extremely humble guy that has a resume that just never stops. From Dan Kennedy to Perry Marshall to all the guys. I swear, animals are just like kids. It's like the second you have something, they'll get up. Um, and still to this day, me and James will jump on with calls with Mark all the time. And I swear every single time we're on a call with him, we get off and I'm like, I just learned three new things about marketing, how to position an offer differently, just so many different creative ways. So Mark is uh, right now, I know and he's been doing this for a number of years, publishing books for people. I know he's done podcast syndicates before anybody was talking about podcasts. He had a show on iHeart Radio for a long time. He's an expert in direct mail. He's an expert copywriter. And why we're all here today is actually Mark is probably one of the most phenomenal salespeople I've ever met in my life. So where I first got, especially from on stage, he's unbelievable presenting. But the way that he sells, I've never seen anything like it. So I first got to experience it by it putting a lot of money in my pocket back in the end of 2017, 2018. I started to launch some programs. And I remember I had posted inside our private mastermind group and I said, "Hey, is anybody looking to take some extra calls to close some high ticket sales?" And surprisingly, Mark was like, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." What I've learned about Mark is that the way he sells, just like he promotes it, is so easy that it's kind of fun for him. I've seen him do this with a number of different programs that he's jumped on for 2 or 3 months. He destroys every other salesperson's close rates on there. He makes a boatload of money, and then he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go off and sell this other thing." And when we first brought him on, Clear to Close, which went on to do a ton of stuff, he sold on Made You Look. He sold on, God, what else? Maybe even Fully Covered for a little bit. And his close rates were consistently anywhere from 50 to 70% without any kind of triages. And, we've had other sales reps listen to his call and just say, "I don't understand how this guy is so relaxed and smooth." And we were on with Mark a couple weeks ago talking about another possible project. And I was just expressing there's this rumbling under, especially in the online space with inflation kind of catching up. People just, getting a little nervous on what's exactly going to happen. They're seeing their 401ks go up and down. And I've, quietly been hearing from a lot of different, from regular marketing agencies to high ticket agencies to, funding guy that I know that used to fund all Cardone stuff and Tony Robbins, that there's a lot of buying fear going on, and it's hitting every single market. And I felt it. And I know a lot of guys like that aren't out there talking about it because it's not good positioning. And the old methods that they're doing are kind of just like people want to buy and they're just not quite sure. So we were telling Mark about this in conversation. He's like, man, I haven't felt anything. And that's what kind of led to like, you know what, we should do a training on how you sell, because it is so vastly different than most things that I've seen. And it's very simple. It's very, James says it best. It's like you're sitting next to your buddy having a beer, and it's kind of that simple, and it's not overly structured and any of the, there's a million different tactics that everybody tries to teach to really make sales too mechanical, and more mechanical than it needs to be. So without further ado, I give you Mark Imperial.
Bobby, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and present for you guys. And as you said that, Bobby, I feel like it's like when the tide rolls out. That expression, you see who's naked or whatever. And I kind of said to you when you were talking about the grumblings and stuff, I go, you know what? A lot of that really reflects on what people were doing to sell. Because when it was easy and money was running uphill, you didn't have to be that great. And when it gets tougher, that's when you kind of see it. And when you mentioned that, you were feeling, you started to see the pinch in like September or whatever. I didn't feel it because we were doing conferences and the numbers were always the same. Do a conference, get 5 clients in the first, month or whatever. So it's been consistent that way. So what I'm going to share with you is really, it's kind of weird zooming out and looking at what you do. Because when I started in sales, I was total shit. Like I was crap at selling. And as I trained myself and I learned and invested in so much to learn about selling, it seemed to get worse. So it was finally when I threw all that stuff out and started going just with instincts, and I would pick up just things from here and there. That's when it started to come together for me. And I'll share that with you. Let me share my screen then, and we'll just jump right into it. So my method, I call the 3D killer one call close. When I first originally taught this method, it was because I was coaching DJ entertainers. As Bobby mentioned, I had an information marketing business in 2005 to DJ entertainers. And their biggest problem, and you can relate to this is every service business. It's getting that prospect, and then, we'll think about it. We'll think about it, and then the chase is on, or the lack of chase, right? So this is how it all started. And I came up with a way to get the close, the deal in one close, and one call or one meeting. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. I know a lot of you guys, and here's the one thing about this. I'll preface this by saying, I know that there are some high level people in sales that are on here with us that just crush it. They've been doing this forever. Sales experts and pros. And then there's some that are, intermediate. Maybe they got into business and they didn't even think selling was part of being in business. So in the chat, if you could drop me like, what business are you in? What do you sell, and how long you've been doing it? I'd love to just get a feel for the type of business owners that are here, and what all that you sell. If you could just drop it in the chat for me. I know there's agencies, right? What else are people selling? SEO, direct marketing, lead gen. Okay. Marketing services, right on. Coaching, consulting, marketing. Okay. M&A, business brokering. Do a lot of work in that space. Great. Insurance, email platforms, and print shops. Awesome. So high ticket, technology to gym owners, trading. All right. So I've got a good grasp on it. Concrete, stone, see, home services, masonry, real estate. Perfect. So as they say, let's go. So we're going to tap into the hidden psychology of people and how people buy and refer and how you can be seen as the only one that they want. So first and foremost, jump in the Facebook group. Just started this today for this purpose because this is where I'm going to give you copies of my books. So I'll give you digital copies of my books there. So go ahead and join the Facebook group there if you can. And here's what we're going to cover. Part one, the unframework framework. It's a little bit ironic, I know. Part two, the 3D one call close method. And part three, how to start pre-sold and how to stack the cool so you already pretty much arrived pre-sold. You know, Bobby mentioned that whenever we have these conversations, a lot of times the stories that I recall, they're just from experience and from memory. And he gets things, you know, he'll pick up 2 or 3 new concepts. I don't know if he wants me to reveal any of them, but the last one was we were talking about, you know, selling in the round and round table selling. Maybe we'll save that for later. I'll have to talk to Bobby about that. But this is what we're going to cover. So we'll jump right into it. Part one, the unframework framework. And this is how, this is the way that selling really should have been, like all along, in my opinion. I taught this originally in 2012 to my membership for DJ's Edge. These were DJ entertainers doing weddings, bar bat mitzvahs, and corporate events. And the biggest feedback from my members is they were struggling with chasing leads and how do I get them to call me back, et cetera, et cetera. So this is for veterans and people that were new to sales. And at the time, I had a girlfriend that started tutoring just on the side from her teaching job. And she was scared to sell. So she really just said, how am I going to, you know, I got a meeting with, I've got like 6 people that want to meet with me, 7 people want to meet with me. How am I going to sell these people? I've never sold a darn thing in my life. I just want to be a teacher. So I'm going to share that story with you. Have you ever wondered, you know, what the perfect conversation would sound like if you ran into your client soulmate and the one that like clicked with you so well that it was almost like love at first sight? Just like Tony Robbins said, if you want better results, it starts with better questions. So today's training is really about just asking better questions and instinctually, not from a script or anything. And, you know, the question that I discovered wasn't mine at first. I like I said, I picked and chose from people that I learned from and I pieced it all together. So I made it my own question, and it's revolutionized the way that I bring on clients. And you too will make it your own as well. And like I said, after I learned this, I've been doing this like forever. There's a number of things I've picked up. I'm even going to change your thinking on the old outdated, you know, tactic of tie downs. People say tie downs, agreement. Which today it's just, what do people hear whenever they hear people doing tie downs? They hear, oh, this guy's selling me. He's selling me hard. So I'll change the languaging around that for you. So here's really the first writer downer, and it's how I met Christina, my now ex-girlfriend, for other reasons rather than selling, probably because I'm a jerk and selfish or whatever. But what happened was May 5th of 2007 was watching the fights, De La Hoya and Mayweather, with some buddies of mine. I had another buddy of mine, DJ Rob, spinning at well, it was called The Lodge at the time. Then it became Base Camp. And he's like, hey, dude, come and see me. The place is packed. Come and see me. I'm like, okay, cool. Rolled over there. So rolled over to this bar, and they had a band playing. All right. Saw Christina across the room, whatever. Just walked over to her, clinked Coronas at the time. Clinked Coronas, and I just asked a really good question. I looked at the band and I was like watching it with her, looking at on the stage. And I just picked out the goofiest looking guy in the band. And I just asked a different question. I said, is that your boyfriend? And that is literally how that started. And then, you know, cut edit to later that, as they say, the rest is history, right? So starting with the right questions. Okay, so I start with the joke. But at the end of the day, if you're truly with a good prospect and you can truly help them, this is going to bring it out immediately without fuss. I call the conversation 3D. It's essentially one question with 3 parts, and that's it. And I'll get that to you. And don't worry, this doesn't make any of your past sales training obsolete. It's really just going to give you another approach that you might find better. And as I always tell folks, you don't have to take every single thing verbatim. My success came from piecing stuff together. It's kind of ironic. It's like I Frankenstein the way that I sell together. And that's why it's kind of weird. So here's, why we decided to share this with you. As Bobby said, when we had that conversation, he said, conversions are suffering today. People are jaded. There's fearful prospects. Complex sales methods are no longer working. We had a conversation about this too. And my observation is people that see like a dip in conversion or something, they're always trying to fix the problem with something more complicated. When the reality is, if you strip it back to the basics, that's where you're going to find more results, because back to basics never fail. I brought up this example because I've used this before presenting, like Facebook ads and direct mail in particular. If you wanted to find all the people that just moved into your town, into Glen Ellen, and you're a business there, what do some business owners just like ignorantly do or naively do? Well, they invest in radio. Lots of money, Facebook ads, lots of money. Well, if I can pull up that list of the people that moved, and it's just a handful of them, and I can get like a letter or a postcard to them for like less than $1, why wouldn't you just do that? So it really is just a illustration of don't overcomplicate it. In fact, strip things away if you really want to get breakthrough results. So how this started, as I mentioned, around 2012, I gave a crash course version of this to my DJ's Edge group. And then I gave a one-on-one training to Christina for her newly formed tutoring business, because she hates selling. That's why she never wanted to be in business. She just wanted, maybe people like this, just wanted to have a job. Situationally shy, meaning she could really be great with students and in a classroom, but give her one-on-one with the client, fall apart totally. Never was trained to sell and needed to sell in 48 hours because she was referred some folks to go talk to for her tutoring business. So that's why I gave her this crash course. It really resulted in me putting it together, a framework. And after I taught it to her, I'm like, man, I'm just gonna give this to my whole group. So the result of just giving her that crash course in selling, she sold 7 out of 7 prospects on the spot in under an hour for each call. And by the way, now, as I was mentioning to Bobby, I'm averaging selling $15,000 deals in under 30 minutes. So she did this in about an hour, paid in full for 12 session packages. She said it was a purely joyful experience. And now she, loves selling without selling. And she still didn't want to have a real business. And that's another story for another time. But that was the result. And if you want to hear like an example of this, go to workwithmarkimperial.com. Don't do it now, but just save that URL for later, because you're going to actually hear, I stitched together at the end of my calls, my sales calls, I'll actually say, hey, would you make a few comments about what you experienced on this call? And then I put those together. And what you're going to hear is these actual prospects who became clients. This is the feeling that they get from being on the sales call. And they don't even feel like it was a sales call. They feel like they were getting free consulting. So that's what you'll hear there. So who's this for? Professional services. You're in the right place. Any other sales professional whose lives depend on making sales, and whether you're a seasoned sales pro with tons of training or brand new to business or even scared to sell, this is going to be for you. Real quick, just so you know my background, Bobby told you how we met, but just so you can see just a little background real quick. I've 25 plus years in experiential marketing and branding for some of the world's most famous brands, including Under Armour, Pokemon, and Nintendo. As Bobby mentioned, I work with Dan Kennedy, 17 years certified in direct response. And I wrote for Dan's No BS marketing letter for 3 years, reaching thousands of business owners. And I've been selling one-on-one for 39 years. That dates me. I just dated myself. I speak at events. I'll tell you more about that because there's a gold mine there for you. Multiple best-selling author of the 2 books. You'll get those in the Facebook group. And I hosted radio here in Chicago. And this was pre-podcasting. In fact, it was kind of funny when I used to sell interviews. Like literally, it was like I was selling infomercials on my radio show. And we were selling against the podcasters because at the time we were just calling this like real radio. And of course, since the pandemic, podcasting has blown up, and now we sell against radio. Kind of ironic there. I was able to do some really cool things, hang out with some cool people. Yeah, bottom left, that was Walter Payton. Here in Chicago, I worked for Walter. I was his manager in charge of all the DJs for all of his nightclubs here. Got to hang out with cool people. Here's some random weird things about me. Work for Walter Payton. I'm famous for house music. If you Google my name and house music, you'll find that. I coach fighters at UFC Gym. And my favorite TV show is infomercials. Anybody know what that is? Yeah, the veggie bullet. There you go. There's Imperial kickboxing. And you know, it's funny because when you learn marketing and selling, this is why I'm so passionate about it. Because I'm so ADD, I have to do like all the different things within my passions. So you can take your authority and like literally launch any business and pack the house in any business that you do in such a short turn. Another random weird fact, I'm launching a program with UFC fighter Ricardo Lamas that owns the gym that I coach at here in Naperville, and it's called Strikekinetics. Just to give you the hook appeal behind that, if you guys remember Tybo, what's old is new again. So this is going to be the new Tybo, but it's really aimed at personal trainers that want to really learn how to add fight-inspired fitness to their routines. And then we're going to go to consumer after that. Here's a booth. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on too, because I think this is a gold mine for a lot of you agency folks. Kind of ask Bobby, like, why the heck aren't people already doing this? Because for so many reasons that they might not have even thought of. So we're going to be focusing today on the end-to-end conversations and the follow-up to the new buyers. The conversation, here's what it's not. It's not a me-focused sales pitch. So a lot of times on my radio show, I would invite guests to come in and I'd ask them the first question is, hey, tell me a little bit about your work and who are the type of folks that you serve. And the number one mistake that guests make is they just start to vomit and like go on and on and on and talk about themselves. So it's not like that. It's not going to be a me-focused sales pitch. It's going to be talking about them, the problems that they're having. So, fortunately for you, too many people are me-focused. So you're already going to have an advantage if you're not talking about yourself. It's also not a big scripted, elaborate scheme. You're going to see this just one question in 3 parts. No awkward closes or trickery at the end to get the sale. Here's what the conversation is about. This is about subtly demonstrating your high value without bragging. It's about actually helping them in advance. If you remember Frank Kern's RIA, results in advance method, that's what this is all about. And it's a collaborative conversation. So the evolution of this concept and where I really started to discover why I needed to switch up what I was doing this is probably before I started my DJ company, so early 90s. My dad bought these vending machines because he always caught the entrepreneurial bug from whatever the heck I was doing. And he asked me if I could help him place them, in areas around town. So I was like, sure, how hard could that be? So I went into this tire shop here in Downers Grove. And I remember going, oh, this is already weird. I don't even know what I'm going to say or do. And the thing is, I was actually just placing a vending machine, splitting the revenues with the shop owner for free. Like I wasn't asking for a fee or anything, but I do understand that space on the floor is expensive. Well, I went in there, man, and I remember I had a buddy with me, and I was just foolishly naive, thinking that I'm just going to talk to somebody. And I stumbled so bad on my words, didn't even know I was trying to express the value of it. And I think I was like, this is going to help lost kids, because I had like some sticker on there. We're going to save lost children or some shit. I don't even know. He let me go on. And just I was spewing, like I told you about the number one mistake. And he actually let me, the manager let me finish saying, and then he's just like, oh, no, thanks. And like, dude, I was like, okay, this is not going to work. And then I started my DJ business. Now, this is really where the rubber met the road, because I was passionate about what I was doing. I could definitely talk about celebrations and how to rock a party and a dance floor all day long. So that part became super easy. But I was starting to realize, I was like, oh man, I actually have to sell. Before I used to work at clubs and we would have the parties at the club. I never had to sell to a client. The clients were always handed to me. But now when they were like, you know, we want to have our bar mitzvah. Can you meet with us? We'd like to talk to you. I'm like, holy crap. What is this? I have to actually do a meeting. What do I do in this meeting? So I started to invest and devour all the trainings I could from Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins, Dan Kennedy, Chet Holmes, I've learned a lot of stuff from all those guys, but only bits and pieces that worked. Well, what I'm going to share with you, I discovered really in the trenches of that DJ service business. And it's no different than if you're selling AI or lead generation. It is a service business, so it's completely adaptable. And, you know, the originator of mixed martial arts, what I always say, you know, absorb what's useful, discard what's not, and add what's uniquely your own. Part 2, the 3D one call close method. So now here's where the rubber meets the road. We're really going to get going into talking about the conversation. Let's talk briefly about getting people into this conversation, because I always get a question later that, hey, Mark, this is great, you know, conversation for the close, but how do I get people on the call? And my DJs used to suffer from this. Most of the time when people reach out to you, whether it's email, messenger, or at the time it was just a phone call, and people would say, hey, how much do you charge for 4 hours? That is like the bane of every DJ entertainer's existence, because, you know, they're being asked, what do they charge? Now, it's not the caller's fault that they don't know. What that really reveals to you, the psychology, is that they don't know the criteria in which they should compare you. So that is just naturally what comes up, which is, you know, how much do you charge? So here's what I'll share with you here. Obviously, today people do a lot of shopping with email, price shopping. The goal is to turn the suspects into prospects. So this is what I do. And it's the same thing you would do on the phone as what you would do in email. If you say how much, if you spit out that price right away, you lose, because at the end of the day, you become a commodity and you're proliferating that nonsense that price is a factor. So you don't want to ever play that game. So instead, my favorite response has always been, I have a range of programs depending on your dream. You could adapt that for your business, whatever service it is. Hey, I have a range of programs depending on what you're trying to achieve. You see that? Just make it your own. For me, it was your dream, because like we were selling dream weddings and everything we were about was a dream wedding. And then I'd say, is it okay if I learned about your day so I could recommend the right program? So what I just did there, psychology, real simple. I just switched the focus from the price to saying, hey, I need to know what you want to do so I could recommend the right program. Another version that I've used successfully, and this includes what we've learned in some ways, is the takeaway. Hey, I'm not sure if I'm the right person for you. Is it okay if I learn about your day so I can make the right recommendation? That now includes like a takeaway. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to pitch you. I don't need your money. I'm not sure if I'm the right person for you, but is it okay if I learn a little bit more and see if and how I might be able to help you? That's another thing I love. If and how I might be able to help you. That's another way to switch that. So by doing this, I'm telegraphing that price should not be a factor without being weird. Then I take the conversation into getting a meeting or a phone call. Back in the day, and I'm going to give you the context of the DJ entertainer on the phone, before the internet, all that stuff, completely adaptable today in everything that we're doing. What I would do there is I wasn't trying to, if I took a cold call, and I don't want to get into the sales pitch at that moment because you're not prepared, you're not pre-framed. I would say, hey, I'd love to set up a time. And then I would intentionally delay it. And you have to be strong enough to be like, I can delay this, because then it allows you to do more pre-framing and all that so you arrive pre-sold, which we're going to talk about. But I try to get that meeting or a phone call at a later time. Now, of course, if there are some people that there are some people I know that really sell well on the phone and they can turn it into a conversation and they will do the sale right there. I won't argue. If that works for you, great. I didn't do it. I didn't like to do it because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't pre-framed. And I usually like to go after doing my fight camp, then go into the battle. Okay. So we could skip this because I know how you guys are pretty much selling right now. So whether you're successful in setting a meeting or not, you offer your sizzle package. Now, Dan Kennedy, or if you're familiar, he calls it the shock and awe package. And so we started using that term right after 9/11, shock and awe. If you get the meeting, I'd say, great. Looking forward to talking to you. In the meantime, I'm going to send you this. And I'd say, it's the dream wedding success kit, for example. If you didn't get the meeting, I'd say, or they had to, call and see if they could reschedule, whatever, find what time it works for them. I'd go, okay, sure. Tell you what, I'd love to send you the dream wedding success kit. Can I get your details? And essentially you're sent like the insider guide to amazing receptions or that dream wedding success kit. The one tool that really rules them all that I've switched to is using my book, because the book, it does so much. It does so much invisibly, like whether I'm sending them, this is Action Brand Marketing or Books Grow Business in the context of what I'm really promoting at the time. Send them the book because, well, there's lots of reasons that I think we're going to get to. It establishes your expert status first and foremost, because now all of this, you guys have all heard of the Google 7-11-4 principle. Is that right? You guys heard about that? That's their statistic for, what people need in order to convert and to trust and buy from a company. And that is 7 hours of exposure to you, over 11 touch points, no matter where they're from, 11 touch points, in at least 4 places. Well, a huge way to get that immersion and that hour count is with the book, because now they're immersed with you in print. And even if you're repeating a lot of the information in this on videos or on a podcast, and you're dripping those items to them too, that's the gold there. So it establishes your expert status, gets you on podcasts, gets you on stage, gets you in media, radio, TV, and print. So the book really solves 5 of your biggest problems, and more on that coming up. So now the sizzle sequence or the sizzle package that you send, it's not a sales pitch. It's not, when we work together, we're going to do this and take a look at this. It's useful EBM. And if you're familiar with the EBM, the Todd Brown term for education-based marketing. And it always ends with a call to action of the meeting, because you can never assume, that the people that you're sending the package to already booked a meeting. If they did, they're like, fine, ignore. But if they didn't, every time you send some EBM, you're bringing them back to that meeting. That's what that's designed to do. And a common mistake to avoid is to try to accomplish too many things with each step. Huge mistake. If all you're going for is the meeting, everything should be around, let's get the meeting. Let's set the meeting. Let's set the meeting. Not choose from these packages, but just let's set the meeting. Number 1 cause of sabotage, and here's the solution. A pre-indoctrinated prospect is the result of education-based marketing. And the concern is, are you speaking with qualified prospects to begin with? We all know this deal because they could waste a lot of your time. In a lot of industries, it's no problem. In some, it's a huge problem. So if you sold windows, people typically aren't calling you unless they really need windows and assume that they have a budget. So that's okay. In consulting, the problem is people stealing your time and having no money to hire you. So you guys probably know this solution. It's a pre-screening process, an application or a survey form. You're all doing it in your high levels or whatever, asking direct questions that gives you clues about their ability to afford you. For DJs, this could be questions about venue. Hey, where are you having your event? Because the location already tells you. If they say, oh, it's at the VFW, what does that tell you? If they tell you it's at the, at the Ritz-Carlton or at the country club, that tells you another thing. So it gives you clues without even having to ask. Now, for other industries, you could directly ask about the money. Hey, what's your budget for this? Or what do you think this would run you? So now let's get right into the conversation and the psychology behind it. So here's the meat and potatoes here. People ultimately want two things. And I want you to remember this moving forward, because this is always going to come up. Two things, this is all they care about: to feel understood. So they want to be heard. And then the number two thing they want is they want certainty. They want the comfort in knowing that whatever they're looking to get fixed is going to be handled because they got a guy or they found the guy. That's the only two things that anyone really cares. And in Christina's example that I shared with you earlier, when she came back from each of those sales, it was amazing because the conversation we had was she would laugh and she'd be like, "This is so weird. I barely even said anything." And it's because the framework in which I had her, give her the three-parted question, it makes the client sell themselves essentially. She barely spoke, but just the fact that she knows which questions to ask and how to probe gave the feeling to the prospect that she really understood him. And oh my gosh, she knows my problems. They're now making these assumptions that they know all of your problems and you're the person that they want to hire. Eben Pagan said it best when he said, if you can describe and enunciate a prospect's pain to them better than they can, you got them. So that's the deal there. And so have you ever had a suspect call you, whether they know a lot about you or not, and say, "Hey, can you just tell me more about your program? I'm ready to buy, but I just need to hear the details." Now, a big, huge mistake is if you skip any of the steps of the process, even if they're ready to buy. I know how easy it is to be like, "Oh, that just saved me a half an hour phone call. I'm just going to show them the package." But I've made that mistake before, and I've seen people disappear. They'll ghost because they have no context to what you're sharing with them. You'll just be compared to whatever preconceived notions they have about your field. So don't ever skip any steps, even if somebody tells you that they're ready to buy. If they do try to rush you for a pitch, my response would be simply this: "Hey, thanks for asking about the program, but before I explain it, is it okay if I ask you a question, or if I learned a little bit more about your work?" And you'll see that's a common theme. Is I'm always starting by saying, "Hey, I want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing and see if and how I could even help you." That's the common theme there. It's why it's not a script. It's just a frame. Now, this is where I'd also, again, try to get them in person before having this conversation. Or if you prefer, selling over the phone, as I mentioned earlier, you can test by going right into it. And the key word there is to test. So framing, that's what I'm always going to talk about, because I don't like scripts. I just kind of like to know the frame of where this conversation is going to go. This is knowing what you're all about and what you want the outcome of the activity to be. And in this case, the only thing you want to do is help. So the frame that you're always going to keep to yourself is, I'm a helpful person. I just want to help. Because people can sense whether you're trying to help or sell. They can sense it. So you help as much as you can, and the sale is going to come naturally. Now, knowing this frame, you can confidently know that the ones that get away probably didn't deserve you to begin with, or for whatever reason is a low quality prospect. So as we say, is this a worthy mission, or is the mission worthy of you even? So that's how you make your decisions on that. So now when you start the meeting, I always say, forget the weird rapport stuff, man. My first learnings of rapport, I shit the bed. I went to go meet a couple that were getting married and wanted to, with meeting DJs to DJ their wedding. I remember meeting them at their house. I went in, sat down. My head was spinning with all this rapport building stuff, and to try. So I sat down and I'm just like, "So how did you guys meet?" Like, it's super awkward. And I think back and like, man, that was freaking terrible. And the couple both looked at each other and gave like this real cockeyed look, like, I don't even know this guy. So that's why I cannot stand by like starting with rapport. I usually typically just say, because this is a natural curiosity question, it's just like, "Hey, how's everything else going? Regarding your thing, how's everything else going in your business?" If you're selling to, B2B, or if it's a wedding, you say, how's the other aspects of your planning going, and just letting them talk. So building the rapport for me there is just letting them tell their story and talk about how everything else is going. So that's how you start the meeting there. I also recommend having a blank notepad handy. And if it's Zoom, you could do what I do, and I'll share my screen. I don't always do this in transparency, but I'll share my screen and have a blank Google Doc open. And so it'll show that you're like taking notes. My sales lately, I've been admittedly lazy about that. You kind of get a little lackadaisical when it comes easy. But when I first started, yeah, I was sharing the screen. They'd see me taking notes. It's just a psychological thing that they're being heard. That's, again, they want to feel like they're being heard. Icky forms are weird. I wrote that because I remember in the early days of selling, when I first started selling like marketing consulting, I think it was the HMA, Hidden Marketing Assets training I took from, what's his name? Johnson. Forgot his first name, but Johnson, Hidden Marketing Assets. He had these forms that you would sit there and you'd have them, you would ask questions and you'd fill out a form. Man, it was super weird doing that because people could just sense that this is a robotic, scripted event. So I always say not to use forms. So when I start off the conversation, after the small talk, I usually let them know that, hey, we're just going to, have a collaborative conversation. I've started saying, hey, we're just going to talk shop over a beer. Okay. And I'm just going to want to make sure that I can help you have the most awesome, whatever it is. If it's an event, reception, whatever it is, you're remodeling their deck, have the most awesome result for your deck. Make that your own. Let them know that they can ask questions anytime. And at the end, we're just going to see, if and how we might be able to help you. So what you're telegraphing is that you're not selling anything at all. You're just trying to help them and learn a little bit more about their situation and what they want to achieve. Now, only if they ask what's being sold. This is super rare. But every once in a while, you're going to be like, what are you selling? What's your program? Or what's that? And you want to, if you want to like just be truthful in your frame, my frame walking in anybody's house is like, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to learn about what you're trying to do. And if I have something that can help you, then cool, we'll bring it up and we'll talk about it then. So I always used to say, hey, I don't know, I don't have anything to sell right now. I need to learn a little bit more about your work or what you're trying to achieve, and I'll see if and how I have something that might be able to help. And if it makes sense, we can talk about it. That's like the frame. It's the mentality of not here to sell you. I'm just here to learn about your situation and see if either I have something that can help you or if I know of something that can help you. And I know when Bobby listens to my calls, I'm probably talking about a lot of weird stuff and just recalling experiences and stories and things that have happened that have helped other people. That's all what it is when you're having a conversation. That's probably why they didn't understand, because I wasn't following like a script or anything. And I was kind of telling stories, because that's what it is. As you're hearing their stories, you're feeding back knowledge. You're just feeding knowledge back to them to see what it is, things that you've experienced. And you're also planting seeds that, I helped a guy, or I know about a guy, and this is what helped them. Because if you know about a story that solves somebody's problem, whether you did it or not, what they take away from that is you understand the problem. And that's the biggest thing. Just by, I tell people all the time, when they're writing books, oh man, I'm just fresh out of college. I don't have any like of my own stories. I'm like, okay, well, you're an estate planning story. You're an estate planner. Find a public story that you can talk about. And that's going to show people that you have an understanding of the, it doesn't have to be your own story. That's my point there. So here's the magic question. If you see any similarities, I first learned this method of the beginning of the question from Dan Sullivan, from Strategic Coach. And I know he also was working with financial advisors mostly. But his question, his frame was, hey, so if we're having this conversation a couple months after your big day, or whatever it is that you sell, if it's not a wedding, it's not after your big day, it's like after we launch this campaign, and you were looking back at those months, like what has to have happened for you to feel totally happy? That's the essence of the frame. So mold that to whatever it is that you do. Like I said, if it was weddings, it would be like, hey, if we were having this conversation a couple of months after your big day, and you were looking back at those months of planning, what has to have happened for you to feel happy about your big day? Now, what's the psychology behind there? You just let them talk, and you take your notes. You're letting them like write the story of their own success. That's what that is. And remember, it's important to know that this is not about you. So don't ever add like, hey, if we were to work together line, skip that and make it only about themselves. If we were having this conversation a couple months after your big day, what has to have happened for you to feel happy about your progress or about your result? What would be, I also say this a lot of times. I go, hey, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you wish you'd get out of this? That's the simplest way to put that. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you wish happened? Because you got to get them to talk about that. And assumptive is icky today, the superbug. Yeah, we're all like, if we work together, leave that out. So you may be surprised when you ask this question, how many people will spill their guts without any further prompting? It's kind of like, it's like the guy in the radio station. You ask him, one opening question, and they tell you all about their work and how they help people and what they do for their clients. And then you're like, well, that covers all my questions. That's it for another episode. It's like, dude, you just got to be a good listener, but let them talk. In this case, you let them keep talking. I know in consulting, you've probably learned that for you consultants on the call, you'll probably appreciate this. Have you ever asked a person to like talk about their challenge or, what you got on the call for, and then they go on for 20, 30 minutes talking about all the problems in their business and how everything sucks and everything's terrible. And in that case, you do have to kind of cut them off. If they're going positive, let them keep going. Let them spill positivity, like their dreams. Let them spill. But if they're talking about pains and, I got these problems in the business and this guy and this guy, you got to actually cut them off and go, hey, whoa, listen, we can keep talking about what got you here, or we can switch gears and talk about what's going to get you out of this problem situation. That gets them like every time. We can keep going and talking about what got you here, or we can switch gears and talk about what's going to get you to the next level. So that's a little side note on that. So on being a good listener, crash course. So active listening is what it's called. That's when you feed something back to someone. If you're not familiar with active listening, you feed it back to someone, something that they said so that they feel understood. So for example, if they express a pain about something, you telegraph understanding when you feed back to them something like, hey, it must be frustrating when that happens to you. It must be frustrating when those leads all go to waste. It must be frustrating that you spent hard-earned money on those leads and they were wasted. This may seem hard at first because many people you probably know are poor listeners. So you just do active listening so they know that they're being heard. Because as I mentioned, that one of two big points is they want to feel heard. So that's how you make them feel heard. Now, the psychology of the elements here. Future pacing. Having them see themselves in a future, in the future successful with whatever they were trying to achieve. You're letting them see themselves successful. Theater of the mind, you've probably heard of that. Having them visualize an emotional event. In the case of a wedding, they're visualizing that dream wedding scenario, and it's giving them a vision. It's like the movie dream montages, where you see that perfect, it's set to the happy music and you see a success and there's no pain whatsoever in any of those scenes. It's like, that's the movie dream montage moment that you want them to craft in their head, in the theater of their mind. So what this does is it gives them clarity and the confidence and feeling of capability, free of any of the current pains, and it's lacking any of the potential problems that they might have. Then they, everybody else in the world expects the salesperson talking to them to be giving them a sales pitch. So this is always a refreshing change of pace because we're never talking about our product or our service or our program. We're only talking about their dream success. So that's why they expect the sales pitch from, because that's what everybody else gives them, and you're giving them something totally different. Everybody else has an icky rehearsed pitch, and you're not doing that. Everybody's also trying to be clever and having the best answers, and that's icky because that's like acting. So don't always try to. You don't have to always be clever or have the best answers. Like I said, I pull from just memory. When people jog my memory about something that happens, you'll hear it on my calls. They'll say, oh yeah, I know a guy that was trying to do that, and this is what happened, and this is what, you're recalling experience. And of course your experience just stacks as you get more into your field, as you mature. So feeling happy, Zig Ziglar said this: selling is a transference of feeling and emotion. I get excited. I was selling Clear to Close and Made You Look for video marketing. And I loved it. Probably the reason why I got 75% conversion on a video marketing program is because of my passion for it. I mean, I practice what I preach. I do video all the time. It's the number one driver in my business. So you're going to feel that when I'm selling it, because I'm not really selling it. I'm just saying how awesome it is because I do it too. And I'm sure that's why the conversion was 75% on that program. So you're basically letting them sell themselves on a successful result. But on a side note, if you love what you do and you know that it has that value for people, this is already going to be baked into the feeling and the essence of your frame that's going to come out. Now, there's three types of people when you ask these questions. Three types of people: those who play, good prospects that have a vision, they'll share it with you. That'll be the most fun conversation you have because they'll be all smiles talking about how happy they are because you're making them envision that positive outcome. Then there's those who try but can't play. There's nothing wrong with these folks. They're not bad people, but they're harder to help because they lack vision. You may or may not want these folks as clients, but if they're trying to give you like a positive outcome or what they think it should look like for them, or what would success look like for them, you can gauge, right, pretty much instinctually on their response to what type of a client they're going to make. That's another cool byproduct of this conversation, is you're learning a shit ton about them. Then there's the third type, the people those that won't play. Kind of like that bride and groom that I was like, hey, how'd you guys meet? Super awkward. And they're just like, we don't even know you. What are your packages? Like, I don't remember the conversation, but I could tell that was not going to close. These dudes were price shopping or whatever, just by the way that they treated me, even though I was super awkward, in fairness. But for those who won't play, they'll be like, I really don't want to talk about that. What are your prices? Well, obviously I would run because, it's, imagine starting a relationship with somebody that's already negative to the conversation. So you just kind of exit and say, hey, I don't know if we're going to be a great match. Try to, point them out to another solution for them that might help. Three types of people. So now feedback, what they said, similar to it's okay to take it from their notes. What I usually do is I'll read the notes that I was taking, and it shows that you're listening. I'll feed it back to them. I'll be like, so you said you want to make sure everybody is on the dance floor, and you want to make sure that everyone, no matter what their age range is having a good time. So see, you're making them paint that picture, and you're feeding it back to them. So that, again, that number one element, they want to feel like they're heard. Now, if they are real talkers, which is a good thing, and they gave you a lot of things, I would say, hey man, pick the three most important things to you. If you could pick three things out of this list that are the most important to you, what would those three things be? Now they're drilling down even more into the story of the three most important things that they want that you can sell them on. You're reading their mind because they're actually telling you these things. By the way, when I first started and I didn't have this framework, I used to start with a client buying DJ services or event planning, I'd say if you could describe your ultimate successful event celebration, what 3 words would you use to describe it? And because what they would say is, man, I just want it to be super crazy, off the wall, fun, but yet classy. Or if they say, I want it super classy, but fun. You see how those 2 descriptions are 2 distinctly different telegraphs. One's telling you that they want Animal House. The other one's telling you they want a classy affair, but they want it, fun, like, ha ha ha, put your pinkies out. It's giving you information on how you're going to be talking to them, how you're going to language with them throughout the rest of the conversation. So feedback what they said from that question. Now, let's go 3D. And originally, it's a good thing this wasn't called, I wasn't going to call this double D, but I'm sure it would have had a totally different audience for that. So more jokes. Okay. We're going to go 3D as a groaner, right? Now, let's see. Now, we're going to break down the questions for the first D of the 3D. I call it dangers. 3D dangers. Now, let's dig a little. If we were having this conversation a couple months after your big day and you were looking back at these months of planning, remember, this is the DJ context. What dangers would you have to overcome for you to feel happy? What dangers are there? Now, this is like, this is putting the salt in the formula there. This is like letting the folks know, reminding them that they have obstacles that they're looking to overcome. What are the dangers? Whether they say it's a competitor, or whether they say it's, they don't want to lose money, or what dangers would you have to overcome to feel happy about your result? And you take those notes. Now, the hidden psychology of the D, this D, which is dangers. Pain. People buy solutions to escape pain more than to gain pleasure. I'll give you a little, there's so much nuance to this, because when we were selling, wedding services and for people's celebrations, there's a nuance to this. We learned that you have to make sure you don't stay in the pain too long, because they actually are more aspirational. They're buying something they want to hear about joy. I learned this by really failing trying with a postcard campaign. We used to, send like, don't let this ruin your wedding. We'd send out 500 pieces of that to measure the response. Then the other one was, how to make your wedding, unforgettable, successful, and fun. Now that gets a higher response. It was more aspirational. So you have to really, it's all about testing. We know that. So people buy solutions to escape pain more than to gain pleasure. Now, we're not going to stay in the pain too long, but they have to feel something. So, examples like could be people won't dance, the music sucks. Sometimes they'll be clueless to answer this. You try not to lead them, but you can help them if they can't think of what to say, like dangers. I don't know. What kind of dangers would I possibly have? I'd say, give them an example. Hey, that's okay. Some folks have mentioned, music, or they think people won't dance. That's usually enough to jog them and be like, oh, okay, gosh, I got it. Now I know what I'm thinking about. Okay. So that could be enough to get them to start thinking. Now, folks that struggle here may be very optimistic, and that's okay. You just want to telegraph that there are obstacles, and you're demonstrating your awareness of those obstacles. You see, you're not trying to sell them, but you're trying to just demonstrate your awareness of them. So you show them the pain because we're going to bridge it into the solution. And this is aligned with that formula of problem, agitate, solve, and people fear the pain. So that's why the danger is that second D. Now you feedback their dangers and you prioritize 3, just like in the first D. So you told me that you were afraid of this, this, and this. And again, if they give you more, you say, what are the biggest 3 dangers that you're afraid of the most? And then feed them back to them. That's on another note. When I was talking to Bobby, I was expressing to him that I find that when people start to overcomplicate their sale or start to use these like real complex formulas and selling formulas, it makes it more difficult to close. The more you strip away from a sale, the easier it becomes. That's why I'm always talking about just showing them one thing or just three things, no more than three things ever. So feedback the dangers that they're trying to avoid. Now, we're going to move to the second D, which I've called dreams. Dreams. So here's the dreams question. Hey, again, so we talked about dangers. What dangers would you have to overcome? Again, if we're having this conversation a few months after your big day and you're looking back over those months of planning, what dreams would have to come true for you to feel happy? This is similar to the first question, right? The big question about like what would have to happen for you to totally be happy. This is again bringing them back to the dream scenario. What dreams would have to come true for you to feel happy? And then they'll tell you, they're again in their own head. They're imagining their successful day. That's the biggest thing is like, can you get them to see themselves in the successful outcome? If you're selling any type of B2B, you're selling business. What do they want to see? What do they want to achieve when you're generating leads for them? What are they picturing? They're like, man, I would dream that I would have so many leads that the money would be flowing in and I would be, having boat drinks. So you're trying to get them to see that for themselves. So here's the hidden psychology of this D, dreams. People buy pleasure second to pain. And here's where we show pleasure. Again, theater of the mind. When they tell their dreams, their mind can't help but picture themselves living through their dream. This is also where they tell you exactly what it is that they want. Similar to that, what three words question. This is where they're at the, top of mind desires lie. So there's no guessing anymore at what it is they want. They're literally just telling you. And this is where they get happy and you're there to smile with them and you're letting them take you on their adventure. You see, and heck, even if I told you nothing more, you're already getting the point. Like, wow, if they did tell me all this stuff, I do know what to kind of bolster, what to talk about, what to leave out. And I'm all about leaving more out than adding. So leave as much out as you can and only focus on the things that they actually want. And, give them a few cool ideas along the way. I love doing this. When they're telling you my dream is this and getting everybody, on the dance floor. I'm going to have people from 3 different generations and we're going to have a bunch of kids there. I'd say, what's cool? And then you give them a method that you do at your parties or your events. And you tell them, what's cool? We'll dance between the courses. And what we'll do is, since the adults take longer to eat, we're going to have the kids come up for a game. You see what I'm saying? So you're peppering this in with your knowledge and experience. So that's also that's telegraphing your expertise. So that's the hidden psychology of dreams. Again, list down their dreams, feed them back to them. And again, if they have many, after feeding back, ask them to pick their top 3. What are the top 3 dreams that you really want to come true? Finally, we move to the final D, which I've termed dependables. Dependables. So here's the question to really dig out the dependables. One more thing. If we're having this conversation a couple months after your big day, mute yourself, please. If we're having this conversation a couple months after your big day and you're looking back over those months of planning, what could you depend on that will lead to a success so you'll feel happy? And you may help by saying, by depend on, I mean, who's the life of the party? What crazy work dances do you do or college shenanigans that you can count on to truly put your party over the top? So again, this is the context. If I was selling an event service, I'd say, what can you depend on? Now, I'll tell you the psychology behind this. The psychology behind the depend on is you're trying to remind your prospect that they have value, that they have skills, because one of the biggest reasons people don't buy stuff is if they could believe in the product, they can believe in you, but what am I going to say? They don't believe in themselves, or they don't think that they're capable of doing it, or they're not capable of the success. Therefore, they don't invest. So this D is all about what can they depend on. So this is where you're really showing them their skills. And, if you were selling them on a program that gets them on stage, you're going to remind them that they deserve to be on that stage and the charisma that they have and what they deserve. So it's really, what can you depend on that you know is going to lead to a success? Have fun, take notes on this one. Here's the hidden psychology behind the third D, which is dependables. People must feel confident in order to make a decision. The fear of the unknown is the greatest cause of analysis paralysis. They just don't know if they're making a good decision at all. Along the way, give them ideas that are going to bring out their dependables. What they already know gives them comfort. So when they think about their party and they go, oh, Uncle Morty, he's hilarious, he's going to be breakdancing or whatever, let them talk about that and imagine that happening at their wedding. Because what they already know gives them comfort. Who they already know gives them comfort. If it's other people that are going to be associated with this, other people in their company, their own strengths and assets give them comfort. So this part of the killer conversation really knocks it out of the park, because this is, again, instilling confidence in themselves, allowing them to invest with you. Now, throughout this dependable section, you play out their fun with them, but remember, this is about them. And it's the same as before. Feedback their list, prioritizing the top 3. Now, do you see how powerful the 3D conversation is? Do me a favor. I want to take the temperature here and see, how are we doing? Please drop a note in the chat if you picked up anything nuggets. I've got more coming up. There's some languaging I'm going to share with you. I just want to see how we're doing so far. Nice. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll keep rolling then. That's the 3D conversation. Now let's talk about getting the deal done. And this is the transitioning into the close. And it's not really close. It just happens naturally. This is what you do. So you're recapping what you guys talked about, assuring them about their good ideas. I usually don't go too deep. I just recap the top 2 or 3 priorities in each area. So I'm going through the list of the notes that I took. I'm like, all right, so we're going to overcome these dangers. We're going to achieve these dreams, and you want to avoid, or you can depend on these people or these things in your business. So you see, and this is natural to make this mistake. I kept saying we. This is not about we as if we've already hired us. So scratch that. This is really about you. You will be happy if you avoid these dangers. You'll be happy if these dreams came true for you, and you can depend on these folks. So those are the things that you're going to recap in the conversation, and recap the cool ideas you gave them in each area. Yeah. And we talked about getting everybody dancing. And I mentioned, if you think that's a good idea, we can do that. The dancing between courses. Sound good? Boom. Then it's going to come down to, here's the simple asking for the sale. In the party context and event sales, I just say, hey, does that sound like an awesome party or what? Or I haven't found anyone to disagree, because most of the conversation came from them. You see what happened there? Like, this is where, in a lot of cases, man, they're doing like 80% of the talking, and you're doing like 20, if that, because most of the conversation came from them. And the most hilarious thing about it, if you think it's funny, but is like at the end, they're like, man, that Mark is such a great guy. But it's because I'm probably one of the few people that actually listens to them. They probably don't even have that luxury at home, So the conversation comes from them. And now here's the simple ask for the sale. Hey, would you like my help? This is the old Frank Kern, right? Would you like my help? Or this is my take on it, and you'll hear me do this a lot. This is languaging. I always say, and by the way, this is avoiding that term, the overused term of, If you're interested, would that be interesting to you? Would you be interested? Would you be interested? Would you be interested? Would you be interested? How many people use those terms? Would you be interested? No, just change the language because that already triggers the sales alarm. No, I say, hey, if you're open to it, I've got an idea for you. Can I share it with you? Or, hey, if you're open to it, I'll give you the 3-minute tour. That's what I do a lot. Hey, if you're open to it, I got something I can share with you. If you're open to it. So you see, you did this whole conversation about them telling their story and they feel freaking great about it. And then your presentation on what it is that you're selling them, it literally should be like mine's, I think 5-10 minutes tops of the whole thing. I can get it down to 5, but like sharing what it is that you're going to offer them, but say, hey, if you're open to it, I've got an idea for you. But see, this is where I don't always, and I told Bobby a story about this, about being with Dan Kennedy. And he shared with me that what he would do in a discovery day, he would have this big lengthy, conversation, and Dan would excuse himself, go to another room, and you'd hear him rummaging through stuff. And he's like knocking over books and shit on the desk. And then he'll come in with like 3 things for the client and say, here's what I think you should do. Whether it's contrived or not, the feeling of that is that you listened to them, they were heard, and you're giving them certainty that you're the person that knows how to help them and that you've hunted down this special thing or this special solution just for them. So that's why I always end with the, hey, if you're open to it, I know exactly what you should do. If you're open to it, I'll share it with you. And that's it. That's the simple ask. So you're essentially at that point asking them for permission to sell them. And notice that you've delayed the selling, any selling throughout the entire conversation. And this is where you wait for that enthusiastic invitation to help them. I always get like, yeah, please. Of course. Yeah, let's do it. This is where they say, yeah, what does that look like? Or where do we start? Oftentimes you're gonna get the feeling right away that they're enthusiastically asking for your solution. They're like almost begging you for it. And that's where you thank them for inviting you to explain your program. And you can go right into it from there. So important notes to assure the deal. So I don't care what your program looks like. Here's where it gets to the, one call close part of the thing. I don't care what your program looks like. This is where less is more. I encourage you to go through whatever it is that you're selling. And I can assure you that a lot of folks' stuff is too complicated and can be stripped down. So you're merely looking for an agreement that you're the person they want to work with. That's it. Once they've got that feeling that, man, I found a guy or a gal, she's going to help me. Now you don't want to undo that sale. It's already made for you. And most people's mistakes start with overcomplicating the offer. So this is not where you dump the millions of options on them. And this is like a big mistake in the DJ world that I solved when I invented this. A lot of times, a wedding DJ, I'll give you an example because I'm sure it's exactly the same when you sell any type of service package, digital marketing, or whatever it might be. They're like, oh, I've got these 3 programs. Let's walk you through them for the next hour. And then, what's the expression we learned from Dan Kennedy? The confused mind takes no action, right? And all that you do when you stack stuff, and remember the old internet marketing days, and this bonus, and this bonus, and this bonus, and this bonus, strip that all away. The more you add to the sale, the worse the conversion goes. So this is not where you dump the million options. You focus the sale on reserving their spot and on the importance of working with you being the top priority. So I'll give you an example in the DJ world, and you can adapt this, I can promise you. In the DJ world, when I was a single operator, we can only do one party a night on a Saturday night. That was it. And how many brides? They all have their party on Saturday night. It's the most popular evening. Naively, brides don't think, it doesn't occur to them. I've heard so many people, when I used to sell the brides, be like, oh, yeah, my wedding's blah, 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 this date. I already know who we're going to use. And the first thing I'd always say, did you already reserve them? And they'd be like, well, no, but we know we're going to use them. I said, how do you know they're available? They could be on somebody else's wedding. Oh, I never thought of that. Most common reaction. Oh, I never thought of that. How could you not think that somebody might be booked? But that's the most common thing. So what I did in their case in the DJ world is I had them focus on, hey, I used to say, and I probably had this in a slide coming up. Yeah, let's talk through this in case I have it. I get ahead of myself. Important notes to assure the deal. I'd say, of course, price is a concern, but it shouldn't be the main concern. What I do in my presentation, what I'm showing in that little tour, I said, hey, let me give you the 2-minute tour. And if I had packages to show them, I'd just show them to them quickly, as few words as possible on each package. And I'd say, I show them the range, but I don't go into any depth at all. I only show them the sizzle and what's possible. So I'm not going into minutia. I'm saying I'm basically doing good, better, best, or just good, best. That's it. I comfort them in letting them know that they have plenty of time to make those decisions later. Then I get the retainer. I would say, you know what? You can take your time. Your party is 6 months from now. We don't need to decide on which package it is. The most important decision that we need to make right now is to know if you and I want to work together. If you think that I'm the right match for you, it's most important to lock in your date, because that way no one else can book me and I'm all yours. So I say that's when I get the retainer. The biggest deal killer I've seen with DJs in particular is their concern about choosing a package. Hey, which package do you want to choose? They can't decide that sitting with you at that meeting. No wonder they're going to have to get back to you, because they have to freaking go through all of your different packages. Tamara asked if you could do this with Selling Authority. Yes, of course you can. So once they've got to know that you're the person that can help them, what I do in my business, and this is absolute fact, I have a small team. So I say I can only work with 5 clients a month. That's all I have the bandwidth for, and that's genuine. So if you want one of those spots, that's the only decision we have to make right now. And you can take your time deciding which packages that you want to go with, and I can help you with that decision. But let's just lock in one of the seats. Is that helpful? Does anybody have any questions around that? Because that's like one of the biggest nuggets when it comes to like locking down a sale on the one call. And I'll tell you what else I do. When I was selling DJ services, what I had in my agreement, it was just called a refundable retainer. I'd say, hey, you can lock in your date, and I won't meet any other brides for your date or any other party planners for the next 7 to 10 days. So you can make it 7, you can make it 10, whatever it is. So they have the confidence if you need to go, if you have another company to talk to or meet, which, by the way, if you do this right, how many other companies are going to do this kind of a presentation for them? And how are they going to feel after they meet you? Most of the time, by the way, these brides and grooms, or insert any business owner, 2 things. First of all, if they like you, they like you. They're gonna be like, man, I got a great feeling. And you know how it is. People buy from a feeling. Second of all, when they go to, they can go talk to their parents, talk to Mother Teresa, whatever it might be. They feel like they have that comfort of booking you because they feel like they can cancel. But the second thing I'm going to tell you is most people don't bother because people like to check shit off their list. If they're planning this huge wedding and you're just one piece of it, they want to check it off the list that, man, I've got the DJ taken care of. So I'm going to tell you, in all the times in business selling, just hundreds of parties and events, I think I've had one that had to cancel, but it didn't have to do with not working with us. It was because of a family member that they promised to do their party or whatever, and they had to go that route. But that's all it is. It's just that confidence of feeling. And where this came from in the Dan Kennedy, upbringing that I've had, this is about forced continuity. If you remember forced continuity, it was you had to take it. You know how nowadays you have to check a box to add something to your cart? Back in the days, it was like you're automatically getting the subscription unless you uncheck the box. That's all that this is. this retainer's good. And in 7 days, I'm charging you, the contract's solid. So you can even like say, I'm not even going to charge you for 7 days. Cause I didn't. What I used to say is, hey, it's $500 to lock in the date with me. Not even going to charge you for 10 days. But when that 10th day hit or the 11th day, boom, they got charged. And then kaboom, kabap, you're under contract. Let's see. I got a question pop up. Daniel asks, let me handle this now while we're here. Quick question. When you're wrapping up a conversation with a gym owner after going over the services you provide, how do you typically approach closing the deal? Do you lead with a direct question like, how soon would you like to get started? Or do you take a different angle to guide them towards a decision? So remember what we talked about where I was like, said, hey, that sounds like a great plan. And then if they're like, yo, yeah, I don't use the, hey, when do you want to get started? Because that kind of is a pressure kind of a situation that kind of puts a pressure. It makes them like have to pull out a calendar. It's too much. So what I personally do is I say, okay, well, here's the next step. And then I say, the next step is I'm going to, send you this and just simply authorize that. And then I'm going to send you the link to my calendar. You see? So I'm putting the onus on the only decision you're making right now is if we should work together. The only decision we're making right now is if we should work together. Don't even talk about when are we starting. Don't pull out a calendar because they're going to have to call their mom. They're going to have to do all this shit. Just get them to say they want to work with you. Lock the deal in. And then that way, once you get the payment, you go, boom, here's my booking link. Pick the date you want to start. See, it's like done after the sale. Let me know if I explain that well. And by the way, I promised you to tell you a little bit more about changing languaging about tie downs because, the most, oh man, the one tie down that probably gets under your skin is, does that make sense? Does that make sense? You probably hear that a lot, right? Does that make sense? One thing I learned from a guy, I did his daughter's bat mitzvah. I'm telling you, man, I stitch all this shit together. I did his daughter's bat mitzvah, and he's a sales trainer in the in enterprise space. So I can't use like 99% of what he taught. But one thing he did teach me, and this is probably freaking like 15 years ago, maybe 20 years, and I've been using it ever since. Instead of saying, does that make sense? Which puts the onus on the person and making the person feel like it's kind of like saying, are you stupid? Are you stupid? I don't say, does that make sense? I say, did I explain that well? Because now what did that do? I was like, man, that's brilliant. And it's change of language too. So people don't hear that all the time. Hey, did I explain that well? Shannon here gets crazy because she says I say that all the time, but I'm probably the only one that ever says that I explain that well. But dude, that's so brilliant because now the onus is on me if I'm stupid or not. I say, did I explain that well? It's like a humble way to do that. So that's languaging behind the tie downs. Instead of tying them down, did I explain that well? But don't overdo that either. I always do it like at the end of the presentation. I go, did I explain that well? I might say, did I explain that well, or did that bring up any questions for you? So that's that. So, and again, the main decision is, do you want to work with me? That's it. The only one decision. Now, bonus tip on haggling. Okay, I put this just to remind me because there's another cool thing. I've forgotten more about selling than most people have ever learned. Haggling. How many people ever try to beat you up on price or be like, hey, can you do better on price? Or say, oh, I talked to somebody and they said they could do it for this price or whatever. Here's what I do every time. I invented this as far as I can recall. And I love it because it makes people smile. I just say, I can't economically do that. It sounds weird, right? I can't I wish I could do that, but I can't economically do it. But what does that telegraph just by me saying that? The language behind it. Oh, wait, there's a comment. Hold on a second. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. What did it just do when I say, I can't economically do that? What I basically said to them that I heard them and I'm not offended, but I can't economically do that. without telling my numbers, but they're making an assumption now that you know your numbers and that you figured that you've already sharpened the pencil so much that there's just no room for you to discount your price. So now it's it's the old unfortunately I can't economically do that. That's the only thing I ever say when it comes to like haggling prices. All right, moving forward here. I'm going to be mindful of the clock. I know we didn't really have a clock, but I'm trying to get in as much, and I kept stacking the cool as I was making this presentation because the things that I wanted to share that weren't even in the original training. So part 3, how to start pre-sold. How would you guys like to already be pre-sold before you even arrived at the call? And I think from what my observation, it's what like 99% of people lack, is being pre-sold when they showed up at the call to begin with or at the meeting. I'm going to share with you 3 big tactics, and I call it starting pre-sold or stacking the cool. Now, number 1 of the 3 big tips, lead with the book. I'm going to show you a real case study that's happening live in person right now with my book. This is Action Brand Marketing. Now, my goal is I wanted to spread the word about my book because I'm obviously building a community here. I want to spread the word, and I'm trying to leverage as much as I can to speak to one to many. And I'm trying to do it efficiently. So what I did was I cold emailed a list of around 600 SBDC directors, and I offered them my free book. If you're not familiar with SBDC, it's part of the SBA, Small Business Administration. I have mixed emotions about this because it's kind of like, you ever heard about, hey, would you want to join a chamber of commerce and try to sell to them? And those people are mostly playing golf and they're out to lunch, right? But at the end of the day, they're business owners. And there's Dan Kennedy's expression is, hey, our goal here is to find needles in haystacks, of needles, buyers in haystacks. And the number 1 goal is to just find haystacks with the higher concentration of needles. That's it. So you would call a chamber of commerce a low concentration of needles place. Jury's still out on SBDC, but when you're going out to the masses, they have all the business owners. So I said, I'll do it if I can do it cheap and efficiently. So I emailed them 600 directors offering my free book. Here's what I got. Exactly 40 responded, and I mailed them a book. And now the wholesale cost of a book for an author is $3.42 for this one because it's almost 200 pages. So $3.42. This book is about 150 pages, and it's cost me $2.80. So that's less than the price of a brochure. And I sent it with a 1-page letter offering a workshop. So 40 responded. Do the math on the response from 600 cold emails. That's spam. Now, from that, I've booked 4 workshops already. Originally, I was like thinking in my original letter, I'm like, hey, I'll fly out to you. I'll cover my own costs. But a lot of them were like, hey, will you do it on Zoom? I was like, oh, shit, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, of course I'll do it on Zoom. I booked 4 workshops. And they told me their audiences when they do workshops is over 100. There's a higher response for the topic that I'm hosting. And I've already confirmed 4 workshop dates for, Washington, D.C., Louisiana, Texas, and two cities in Texas, I believe. But even more important, Carl Brown. Didn't know him, but he got my spam, got my book. He got me on a Zoom call right away because I have my calendar. Booked the call, and he's like, "Well, I'm the director for Washington D.C. SBDC," and he's like, "Do you?" He said, "Do you also recognize me?" I'm like, "Tell me, where would I recognize you from?" He said, "I'm on the History Channel." He's like, I appear regularly on the food that built America." I'm like, I love that show. So I started watching the replays of Food That Built America. I'm like, there's Carl. Oh my gosh, there's Carl. So Carl Brown said, not only are you doing a workshop for Washington, D.C., but I have a Sirius XM radio show and I want you to appear. So I did like a whole half an hour segment on the Sirius XM show that I'll share with you. But that is just a result of just sending a freaking book. All right. Cold. And like I said, stack the cool, bro. When I got that appearance, and whenever when I said, hey, I got on the small business report, I added it to my outreach cold emails to other people. I would just keep adding links. I always say stack the cool. Hey, if you appeared on shows, add the link. If you appeared here or there, if you worked with other people they know, add the link. So I'm always stacking the cool. Speak and repurpose. Here's tip number 2, to come pre-sold. Because by the way, when people are looking you up and they're doing their due diligence, of course, if they find all this shit on you, you didn't have to say it. You didn't have to brag. It's all in your digital footprint. I was just at Podcast Evolutions, where I sponsored, and you'll see, let's see, speak and repurpose. Hold on one second. I was at, that photo, okay, that's actually for the next slide for podcasting, but the picture underneath it, I spoke to financial advisors, and Bobby mentioned that I sold 40 people on Facebook advertising from the front of the room. I was in a very small room with this very high conversion rate, and those are the actual forms on the right there of the people that signed up for Facebook advertising, and I sold an anthology book, both in the same conference, 2 different sessions. So there are forms there for Facebook advertising, and you'll see that those forms are for Remarkable Retirement, which was the endorsed anthology book that I sold. So speaking and selling from the front of the room is what you get. Now, number 3, podcasting, doing your own podcast and guesting on other podcasts. Comment in the chat if you recognize this famous podcast host. Yep. That's David Shands. David Shands from the Social Proof Podcast. So you can follow, if you follow David Shands, he interviewed me at Podcast Evolutions. And I have an amazing 12-minute interview talking about book publishing that's going on his podcast. And the beauty is I have the recording that I get to use. So it's like, again, stacking the cool. I've got a famous influencer podcast host interviewed me about the subject. Of course, I'm going to add that to stack the cool. So that is all about stacking the cool. Number 3, part of podcasting is podcast prospecting. One of the things that I've done to sell my book publishing services is I'll prospect by appealing to what people want. Instead of saying, hey, you want to buy my service, I want to spotlight them on my podcast, or I want to interview you for my podcast. You've probably seen people copy this, but man, I've been doing this since probably 2008, 2009 on real radio. Before podcasts, I was doing it on my radio show here in Chicago. So I kind of think I invented the whole podcast prospecting thing, but it was radio prospecting at the time. I invite people to my show. And when I taught this at Perry Marshall's Rainmaker event, I'd say they had their headphones on, and then when the intro would start, my producer would hit the start, and we'd start recording the show. They would hear the intro. Well, welcome to Remarkable Radio with Mark Imperial. He's the master at whatever. It's aggrandizing me, and they're listening to this, and they're hearing all of my positioning without me having to say my positioning. So my reputation preceded me. Now I'm talking about them, and I'm saying, hey, who is it that you help? Tell me a little bit about your business. I'm making them look great. I'm not selling them anything. And then I would say, you notice on the that little black banner on the top of that, it says Books Grow Business. That's the article sponsored by. I'd say, hey, the segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where professionals and entrepreneurs publish to grow their businesses and leave a legacy. See that? Most of the time, that's going to lead to conversations. And anybody that's ever been thinking about writing a book, they'll always say, oh, thanks for having me, Mark. I'm interested in that book thing. You see what I'm saying? It's podcast prospecting. And then that interview led to her being a personal client of mine. So that's podcast prospecting. Now, speaking, when I was talking about speaking and repurposing, this is the slide I wanted to show you. I I go to about 10 to 12 conferences a year. The business show, we did one in LA. In May, next month, I'll be in Miami and I'm speaking. And look at my talk title, How an 8-Figure Business Was Built Around a Book. So you see, this is called stacking the cool. Whenever I'm going to be somewhere, this is all part of my social media. I'm going to be blasting where I'm going to be. I'm going to have the recordings from all of my talks, so I'm able to share all that stuff. All your everyday activity leads to more EBM, education-based marketing, that you could send your prospects. So can you see how you do all this stuff and you show up irresistible? Look at the topic for my SBDC, Action Brand Secrets, from near death to a multi-billion-dollar brand. Do you want to know what that's going to be about? Come to my talk. Now, I can actually share that with you if you want to see how I present my Action Brand Secrets. But see, can you see how when you stack the cool, you become irresistible? When somebody comes to meet you, get on a Zoom with you, they now have that feeling like they're working with a celebrity. It totally takes you out of the comparison game. Please write in the chat if you can see what you have taken away from this and how stacking the cool makes you irresistible in this regard. Question here. I know publishing a book can get expensive. Do you think creating a 300-page PDF could still position someone as authority, or does it really need to be physical printed book to have that kind of impact? I'm sorry to say that you have to have a physical book. Think about it. How many 300-page PDFs do you have? I can't even recall one, because digital downloads is like out of sight, out of mind. One of the worst things that's ever happened in the music industry is everything going to MP3 and streaming, because what happened to the freaking album covers that we all grew up with and loved? They all became thumbnails. So you no longer are immersed in anything. Physical books give you immersion. Also, another thing you can't do with a digital copy of anything is you can't sign it. When I'm at my events and my conferences, I'm signing the books for people, and the books hang around. I've had clients that call me, they hire me after having my book for even 2 years. And they'll be like, man, this has been on my desk. But it's like, it's that. And it's the lending factor. They loan the books out. It's all about, that physical book. But nowadays it's very affordable to do a book. Now, manufacturing celebrity and authority. As Dan Kennedy said, the simple truth is, if you aren't deliberately, systematically, methodically, or rapidly and dramatically establishing yourself as a celebrity, at least to your clientele and target market, you're asleep at the wheel, ignoring what's fueling the entire economy around you, neglecting development of a measurably valuable asset. And yeah, it's authority. And yeah, I've learned authority accidentally when I was doing house music. I made records in the 80s. 1986 was when I started my own label, House Nation Records. And I was just doing it to pick up girls. Little did I know that it was going to get me in the doors of any club I wanted to DJ, paid gigs around the world, all from the records. So essentially what I've determined was, in business, the equivalent to having a 12-inch dance record is a freaking book. And it's even more immersive because people are, it's more than a 5-minute song. I've used authority to sell everything, from freaking iguanas to weddings to packing the house at, for my Imperial kickboxing events. The iguana story, I'll leave that for another day, but that was pretty hilarious. I wrote a iguana care guide, and it was a hobby. Started at the flea market, and to get people to our booth, we had my giant iguana on my shoulder, and we were doing a whole, get your picture taken with an iguana. Now, this was 1994, so we had Polaroid cameras, Polaroids, to get people in the booth. Then they get the care guide, and boom, we were selling $1,500, worth of iguanas in a couple hours before noon. In the Facebook group, I'm going to share how a book solves the top 5 business problems fast and forever. I'll share the top 7 ways to make millions giving your book away for free. and how to author your book in 4 easy steps. I'll put that up there. Just started the group, so I'm going to get those videos and put them up. But here, I'll give you the first bullet there now, how the book solves the top 5 business and marketing challenges. Uses of books. First of all, using them as a lead magnet to boost clients and customer acquisitions. This is going to get you on stage. The book's going to get you on podcasts. And of course, free plus shipping, offering your book on your website to get the download. But look at how that positions you before you even go into a sale. That's why, again, I often delay the sales in a lot of times, the sales meetings, because I want them to be able to get this stuff in advance so they can immerse themselves with me without me having to be there. And by the time I get there, they, like I said, that celebrity factor kicks in because they've been listening to you. Number 2, establish a brand that you're known for. This is very deliberate. This is action brand marketing. By the way, action brand marketing, my creation, is blending direct response marketing, everything I learned from Dan Kennedy and all the greats, with real branding, because I've worked with Nintendo, Under Armour, M&M, Mars Candy. I've worked with all of them. So I put the best of the best together. And in a world where the lines between branding and marketing are often blurred, I showed the roadmap to put this together like in one unified system. By the way, action brand, again, when I help people with their branding, establishing a brand that you're known for. I've trademarked it. Action brand's mine. And when I teach it, action stands for acquiring clients and customers through irresistible offers now. How cool of a soundbite is that when I do interviews, podcast interviews, radio, etc.? What's brand? Broad recognition of affinity and novel distinction. Brand. Boom. Mic drop, you see? And why is brand second? Because my philosophy is you don't build a brand to get a customer. You get a customer to build a brand. So that's why and so these are all make really great sound bites. So you want to establish a brand that you're known for. This book, Books Grow Business, I'm the guy that does books. By the way, there's a chapter in here all about books for your brand. And I broke this out from it because I know that, not everybody wakes up thinking I need a book, but they all know they need branding and marketing. You see? So you got to be very deliberate about establishing a brand that you're known for. Now, scaling efficiently. Instead of having those repetitive competitions, you can now speak one to many. And as I mentioned, Google 7-11-4. Get your books out in people's hands. They're not all going to read them. Of course not, but it doesn't matter. This is a shortcut. You're